In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your path. I am honored to be asked to introduce the speaker, but before I do so, I want to compliment Miss North Carolina Black and Gold and thank her for her time and her phenomenal talent. And I'm going to go after the person who put me after you later on. I have the honor to introduce our speaker for today. And I want to do it in two ways. First, I want to talk about what is written about Dr. Anthony Graham. Here's what is written about him. He's currently Provost and Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs at Winston-Salem State University. He's the former tenured full professor and Dean of the College of Education at North Carolina A&T. He holds a Bachelor's of Arts from University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, Master's in Education degrees, Doctorate of Philosophy from University of North Carolina at Greensboro. He is a former English teacher, and he's published a variety of book chapters, peer-reviewed journals, etc. You will see that and so much more in his bio. But here's the untold story. He is not just Dr. Anthony Graham. He is Brother Dr. Anthony Graham. He is Brother Anthony. He is just brother, and most importantly, he is our brother. Amen. The titles that describe him are not his current or former positions in higher education. The most important titles to Anthony, Brother Anthony, our brother, are devoted husband and father and devoted alpha man. His most important academic achievements are not the degrees that he has earned, but what he has done with those degrees. Example, he has participated in too many programs for African American young men than we could name, but here are a few. Brother to Brother Mentoring Program, Lunch with the Kings Program for elementary Black males, the Charles Hamilton Houston Summer Leadership Institute for adolescent African American boys. And let me stay on that for one quick second. Most of you in this room certainly know who Charles Hamilton Houston was, because he is our alpha brother and mentor of Thurgood Marshall. But what most of you may not know is that Brother Anthony and a number of other people probably in this room helped obtain from the North Carolina General Assembly $37,500 to run a summer program for African American young males. That is what he has done, not with his titles, but with his knowledge. And most recently, for the past 3 years, in his capacity as Dean of the College of Education at North Carolina A&T, he has hosted, and this has been part of the Alpha Initiative with respect to education, the Scholarship Search and College Admissions Conference for minority students, which has allowed not just minority students, but their parents to access scholarships that provide them real access to higher education. Those are the things that he has done with his earned education. On a personal note, I've had the opportunity to serve with Brother Graham. I can tell you that his attention to detail is unparalleled. I can tell you that when he sets a standard of excellence, he models that standard by what he does. And I can tell you that he is a model alpha man, whether you've been an alpha for a day or for 70 years. I will also share with you a little minor note that really tells you about who he really is. There have been rare circumstances where in the course of a meeting, he has not raised the issue that he is a proud high school graduate of Kingston. And he is joined by many others, Mike Pittman, and so many others in this room. So he goes back. He's proud of his Chapel Hill, his UNCG, his leadership positions at A&T, and now at Winston-Salem, but most of all, he is a proud alpha man, and I am honored to introduce him and to present him as our keynote speaker this morning. Brother Anthony Graham.
Thank you, Brother Blake Moore. As you were speaking, I was looking around trying to figure out who's this guy he's talking about. Great morning. Oh, let's try that again. Great morning.
Great morning.
Any day that we have the opportunity to open our eyes and rise is indeed a great morning.
Absolutely.
Again, thank you, Brother Blake Moore, for the introduction. I want to pause for a moment to thank an epitome of Winston-Salem State University, our Miss Anka Taylor. She is what Alpha stands for. And I would promise you that there are other individuals on the campus of Winston-Salem State University just like her. So I'm accepting donations for our scholarship. I'll collect those before we leave. To the president of the Kappa Lambda chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, Brother Chuck Wallington, to the executive board and the membership of the Kappa Lambda chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha, as well as members of Alpha Phi Alpha in general, to guests of other fraternities and sororities of the Divine Nine, and to all guests who are present celebrating this Founders Day event with us. Thank you all for inviting me to serve as the speaker for this occasion. And I thank you for coming out in the cold, blustery Saturday morning before the start of what we suspect will be a significant winter weather event in the Piedmont Triad. So thank you again for your presence. And I ask that you please remain safe throughout the changing weather conditions over the next 24 to 48 hours. I will say to you that when I received the email from Brother President Watlington to come and be the speaker today, I thought, no. And let me explain to you why. For 17 years at North Carolina A&T State University, the second Saturday has been reserved for commencement. At Winston-Salem State University, we do not have fall commencement. So I finally thought I would have my second Saturday to myself after 17 years. And then I got the email and I was like, oh, I gotta wake up early on the second Saturday. But I am more than pleased and honored to be here. I promise you that I will keep my commentary brief this morning, but I want to express again how truly honored, humbled, and blessed I feel to join you on this Founders Day. 112 years of leadership, scholarship, fellowship, good character, and the uplifting of humanity in communities all across this great nation and this world. As I reflected on my remarks for this morning, I thought about how extremely blessed I felt on the evening of Saturday, November the 11th, 2000, in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, on the campus of Winston-Salem State University, when I was fortunate enough to become a member of the Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated by way of this very chapter, the Kappa Lambda chapter. Entering an organization where its membership has been at the forefront of every significant movement in this country, and having the opportunity to walk in the footsteps while concurrently standing on the shoulders of giants in American history. Mind you, I didn't say African American history, I said American history. Meant the world to me that evening, and it means the world to me today. In my office on the campus of Winston-Salem State University, ironically enough, there's a painting that I keep on my wall by an artist who identified the 100 greatest alpha men from his perspective. This painting is a daily reminder of the work that I still have yet to do. Each day, the faces of our fraternity's jewels are surrounded by the likes of 93 other prominent alpha men, men like Paul Robeson, Thurgood Marshall, Martin Luther King Jr., Charles Hamilton Houston, Andrew Young, John Hope Franklin, and so many others who look upon me on those days when I feel weary, tired, frustrated, and quite honestly at wit's end, as if to remind me my head is bloody but unbowed. And I collect myself and recenter my energy. Then I thank God for my unconquerable soul, and I push forward, because these brothers, these prominent giants pushed forward, taking no steps backwards and forging boldly, confidently into the unknown abyss with faith in our Creator and an unshakable confidence that what they were doing was rightfully working to improve the lives of men and women all across this country and this world. So it's in this space of moving confidently into the unknown abyss where I want to spend a little time with you this morning. As an educator, I believe in celebrating successes. Yes, we should celebrate successes. But I also believe in placing people in what we call in the education profession in a state of disequilibrium. Disequilibrium is a space where you're made uncomfortable. It's in this space of discomfort where you learn a little bit more about yourself. It's in this space where you are challenged to grow, and you are challenged to think differently, and where you rethink your behavior for the sole purpose of improvement. So I'm here this morning to place us all in a state of disequilibrium. If I did not, I would not be doing my job as an educator. So my message to you this morning is a very simple one grounded in the words of one of our fraternity's jewels, Jewel Robert Harold Ogle, who stated the following in 1936, and I quote, "Never before was it as incumbent upon every member to restate loyalty and exemplify fraternal obligation by consistent life and unimpeachable character. But these must be reinforced by a growing consciousness of the responsibilities that Alpha Phi Alpha faces in the world today, where, if ever the problems which beset us are to be solved and a way of deliverance discovered, it must be by the application of those principles upon which we are founded." End quote. I want to emphasize and reiterate a line in Jewel Ogle's quote. If ever the problems which beset us are to be solved and a way of deliverance discovered, it must be by the application of those principles upon which we are founded. Brothers, my question for you this morning is quite simply, are we applying our principles to meet the urgency of now? I'll ask that question again. Are we applying our principles to meet the urgency of now? As the Kappa Lambda chapter, are we truthfully applying our principles to face the problems that beset this community? As the Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, are we honestly applying our principles to discover deliverance from the issues that hinder our nation from moving forward. My brothers, I cannot help but to wonder if we have become too comfortable. Are we, as my football coach in high school used to say, too fat and happy? Are we resting on our laurels and celebrating too frequently and too fervently the accomplishments of our history rather than working collectively and strategically to create a new history where we stand defiantly in the face of injustice, inequity, and explicit racism and sexism? Where is our presence and voice in the movements of today? Years from now, when a painter offers another rendering of his perception of the 100 greatest alpha men, will anyone in this room have his likeness captured in that portrait? Not because you did something that was self-serving and self-gratifying, but because you sacrificed to stand at the forefront of a critical issue that leveled the playing field for the disenfranchised, the marginalized, the underserved, and the never served. Now, don't get me wrong. Undoubtedly, we should be proud of our history and the significant impact that Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated has had on this country, on this state, on this county, on this city, and this community. However, we must not become so comfortable that we forget that the fight still exists, and that fight is out there, right outside the doors of this nice facility, and is staring us dead in the eyes, daring us to fight back, taunting us for not attacking it, delighting in our inability to destroy it. Are we applying our principles to overcome the fight that's out there, or are we too busy disagreeing and quibbling internally to see the critical essence of that fight? Are we allowing ourselves to get sidetracked by spending so much time majoring in the minors that we forget what called our General President, Brother Dr. Everett Ward, to impress upon us the urgency of now? In the education profession, we emphasize evidence-based decision-making, or the ability to use data to empower one's actions while monitoring our progress towards success. My dear brothers of Alpha Phi Alpha, I ask you, have you taken time to recently analyze the evidence of the problems that beset our current American society, particularly with respect to poor people and people of color, Black people specifically? If you haven't, then that's quite all right, because I'm an educator. And as educators do, I've brought information to share with you. So I'm going to ask a few of the brothers in the room. They're going to pass out a handout. And I want to spend just a few moments looking over some data in the United States of America so that we can all orient ourselves to the problems that beset our community. I did not make enough copies, so I'm going to ask you to share. We're going to give you about 2 or 3, maybe 4 per table. So I'll ask you to tighten up and share. So I'm going to take a moment to walk you through what you see in this document. So in the graphic at the top of the page, there's a comparison between life outcomes in 1968 for Black people compared to those same outcomes for this year, 2018. You will see that Black home ownership in 1968 was essentially the same as it is now. Virtually no change in spite of the increase of Black people with high school diplomas, college degrees, advanced degrees, professional degrees. Concurrently, Black incarceration rates have tripled, and Black unemployment is worse now than it was in 1968. This graphic leads one to come to the conclusion that we are very much still separate and unequal. This problem is one that besets us, good brothers. So I ask, are we applying our fraternity's principles to meet this urgency of now? In the pictorial immediately underneath this comparison on the bottom left corner of the document, you will find one of the graphics that bothers me tremendously. This graph comes from the Office of Civil Rights, and it illustrates the percentages of preschool students by race and ethnicity in the United States of America who received out-of-school suspension for a single incident, and the percentage of preschool students by race and ethnicity in the U.S. who received out-of-school suspension for multiple incidences. Let me let that sink in for a second. That graph shows you the suspension rates of preschool students, children who are age 4. We're doing that now, suspending 4-year-olds. As you look at that graph, you will see for a single incident that Black preschool students comprise 42% of all students who received out-of-school suspensions. For multiple incidences, you see that Black preschool students comprise nearly 50% of all students nationwide who received out-of-school suspensions. Then we wonder why Black students enter their formal K-12 experience distrusting of their principals, distrusting of their teachers, distrusting of their counselors, and why they continue to be suspended at an alarmingly high rate compared to other ethnic and racial subgroups. Brothers, I ask the question yet again. Are we applying our fraternity's principles to meet this urgency of now? In the next graphic, you see data as reported by the Federal Bureau of Investigations that illustrate that the percentage of hate crimes committed across the United States has increased by 12% since the election of our 45th president, whose name I refuse to say. He's 45 to me, about what his IQ is. To provide greater clarity, the most frequently targeted groups have been African Americans, lesbians, gays and bisexuals, Jews, Latinos, and Muslims. Hate crimes in the category of race, 57%. The majority of hate crimes are based on race. Brothers, this problem is one that besets us. And I ask again, are we applying our fraternity's principles to meet this urgency of now? At the core of our precious fraternity is brotherhood. And I want to recognize this truth and lift it up as an essential and necessary component of our beloved organization. However, I worry when our messages in GroupMe or on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram focus so narrowly and singularly on where we plan to eat hot wings and enjoy libations much more frequently than they focus on conversations about these types of problems. I become annoyed when we plan meetings to tackle these issues, but we see the same 8 or 9 brothers showing up repeatedly. And we rarely see pictures of this type of work flooding our social media accounts. But we readily see pictures of brothers at football games or sitting on plots on different yards across the nation. What message are we sending? And how does that message align with the principles of our beloved fraternity? Are we living up to the expectations of our jewels who founded this fraternity initially as a study and support group for minority students who face racial prejudice educationally and socially? Brothers, we must never forget that this fraternity grew out of a need to address injustices and inequities while concurrently ensuring that educated men were surrounded by like-minded men who could provide support and encouragement as they fought against the evil and immorality that saturated their society. Are we holding true to the principles of our fraternity? Or are we falling victim to a divisive narrative that promotes cannibalization by encouraging division of efforts among other people of color? Have we fallen prey to thinking that we have to attack these problems solely by ourselves for the sake of seeking glory, positive press, and awards, which leads us away from facilitating activity between other thought leaders, irrespective of fraternity, irrespective of sorority, irrespective of university or college attended, irrespective of college degreed or non-college degreed. In the words of Carter G. Woodson in The Miseducation of Negro, with the attainment of each of our college degrees, have we distanced ourselves from our community so much that they no longer recognize us, they no longer know us, and they no longer trust us? Are we truly concerned with the problems that beset us and the eradication of those problems? Or are we too concerned with publicity and glorification? And to what end? My brothers, on Founders Day, we should celebrate and honor our history, but we should use this time to leverage the lessons of our past to chart a new present and future. That is my challenge to each of us, not only members of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, but also to any person sitting in this room within the reach of my voice. We must work collectively to create a new future if we are to solve the problems of today and tomorrow. Albert Einstein is credited with saying, "You cannot solve a problem from the same consciousness that created it." We must not think or seek reform. Reformation is simply thinking of a way to do a specific thing in a different way, using the same work performed previously as the foundation for the new approach. You see, reformation relies on the same consciousness that created the initial problem. No, my brothers, we must seek and demand transformation. But you cannot achieve transformation by doing the same old thing that was previously done. Transformation requires creativity. Transformation requires innovation. But you cannot create or innovate if you cloud your mind with frivolous thought and pettiness. Transformation requires asking tough questions, investing time, planning and strategizing, holding people accountable, and most importantly, silence. Reflective, introspective, silence. Dedicated time so you can hear God speak. My brothers, let us use this time of reflection on our 112th Founders Day to think differently and to commit to behave differently. Let's use this time to seek transformative action, aligning our conversations deliberately to the principles of our beloved fraternity, never forgetting that there is a fight right outside those doors. If we are to overcome these problems that beset us, we must trust one another totally and completely. We must focus our energy and attention in an uninformed way to the eradication of evil, and we must challenge ourselves to step up to the plate, holding one another accountable to carry out what we pledged when we sought this organization. You see, I am not concerned with becoming one of the 100 greatest alpha men in a painting, as much as I am concerned about pulling together 100 great alpha men in this room to change the face of this community. That painting is the painting for which we all should strive. Are we working towards said painting? Or are we absent? Are we present, strategic, deliberate, or are we absent? Let's hold true to the principles of this fraternity. Thank you once again for allowing me to share this Founders Day with you. And I thank each one of you for blessing me with your presence this morning. I pray that something I shared today has resonated with your soul, and you will leave this room ready and prepared to transform this great community. Godspeed and God bless. Thank you.